a very, very interesting panel discussion to be moderated by one of the most inspiring women in my circle, Lakshmi. The panel is about how every artist must be the CEO of their own destiny, find investment, build community, and constantly grow the value of their unique offering in the artistic stock market, which definitely exists. What does it mean to constantly stay relevant, reinvent, find inspiration, navigate the challenges to grow the community and be successful as an entrepreneur? Lakshmi, as we all know, is an entrepreneur, curator, and a speaker. She was the founder of CEO of Inc. and continues to break new frontiers in the million things that she does. She's also authoring a book that I can't wait to watch. A true technocrat, turned custodian of the arts. She left Silicon Valley and went back to India to start what we believe is one of the most inspirational talk series that has come out of South Asia. So over to you, Lakshmi, and to my incredible panelists who we have the privilege of listening to today.
Thank you, Apurva. Really loved hearing the interview before this, and Simpsons, obviously one of my favorite shows because Matt Groening is from Portland, and so am I. I know exactly the house he grew up in. So it's really wonderful to see that. And thank you, and welcome to my wonderful panel. And instead of introducing each of them, I'm just going to ask an introductory question to each of them so you'll get to know who they are. And my goal is in the next 30 minutes, you get to know who everyone is in their own words. I am just the Sutradhar. I'm just going to connect the dots, but really the stage belongs to the panelists. So I'll start with the person who got me to do this, which is Vinita. And between Apurva and Vinita, nobody can say no to them. So I wanted each of you to really say for a minute about how would you describe yourself? You know, it's not just your title or whatever. How do you describe yourself? Like when people ask me, they say, what are you? I say, I'm a people collector. I run Inc. I'm the founder of Inc. But I love collecting people and connecting them to each other. That's what I love doing. So like that, can each of you give like a 1 minute thing of, please tell us your organization's name because that's extremely important, but really tell us what you stand for. You're a custodian or something, or you're a promoter of something, whatever it is comes to you for like a minute each. So I'll start with Vinita. Vinita, you need to unmute yourself. All of you, if you can unmute, that'll be great. We're all on it together. So
I know there was a very good reason why I asked you to moderate this panel, Lakshmi, because you asked the most interesting, fascinating, and sometimes the most difficult questions. So now I'm just going to have to look into my soul and say, who is Vinita and what is Vinita? Vinita's current title is Founding Artistic Director of Enact Arts, but I think Vinita is somebody who was born a Gemini, and both sides of her brain exploded at the same time. And I'm trying to find a balance between being a technocrat and an artist and a custodian in some way of the arts. And I'm very grateful to be living in this time, even though I'm slightly advanced in years, because this is the moment where all of that is converging and I feel relevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I totally agree with you. I think sometimes there are times where you feel you were born a little too early, but I think we are very lucky to have enough energy and still to be not born too early. So I think I'm with you on that, Vinita. So next, Snehal, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, nice to meet you, Lakshmi, and thanks for having me. My name is Snehal Desai. I'm the producing artistic director of East West Players here in Los Angeles. And East West Players is the largest and oldest Asian American theater company in the US. And I think for me, the real focus has been empowerment through storytelling. So that has really been why I found a home at East West, and just why also culturally specific institutions are important to me, both for the artists who are telling the story as well as the communities that we're trying to reach.
Great. So then I have Deepak Ramola, who who is used to being the youngest person in the room, but that's going to change today. So
Thank you. Such a pleasure to reconnect, Lakshmi, and hi everyone.
yes.
Well, I'm Deepak Ramola, and my surname Ramola actually means the one who loves to hear other people's stories, and that's exactly what I do at my work too. I am a wisdom historian, a poet, and I believe in the potential of all people, and that's why I have been going around asking for the last 13 years of my life, everybody I've met, what has life taught them? And through my organization, Project Fuel, I turn people's life lessons and learnings into educational and innovative art programs across the world. So that's me. Thank you.
Great, great. And then Anuraag,
Yeah, hi everyone.
your reputation precedes you, but still tell us how you describe yourself.
Well, it's lovely to reconnect again, Lakshmi.
Yes, I know it's been a while. I know I love these things because it's like a reconnecting with everyone. So wonderful.
And it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan of Enact. I work as a comedian and screenwriter, but lately I have been thinking a lot about sort of the nature of stories and how entrepreneurial we all need to be to tell them. And at the core of it, I tell stories that I hope are comedic for a world audience. But really, really, what I've been thinking about lately is just how similar stories are across the world. And in the time and age we live in, it really doesn't matter where the story originates, but it has been my sort of effort, whether through comedy or through script writing, is to tell that story to the farthest audience possible. I think the Simpsons creator was talking about how, the Simpsons resonates 20, 30 years later. The way he feels about time, I feel about geography, that,
Right, yeah.
we're able to tell Indian stories. I think there's a way to sort of reach the world, either physically or now technologically. But I feel that the biggest way the world is sort of connected is by how deep we can go into our authenticity. And I try to do that with stand-up as well. I sort of observe the little world I live in and try to go around the world telling stories about it and find, if people in Norway will find that funny, or people in South Africa, or people in the United Kingdom, or in Bangalore, or Silicon Valley. And through all my travels and through scripts, the only thing I've learned is that people are more similar than we give them credit for.
Yes, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing out of life, right? We want to be happy. We want people around us to be happy and healthy. That's it at the end of the day. So now I come to what used to be Deepak's title most of the time, the youngest persons in the room, which will come to the Chandani Twins. I think you're kind of still competing with each other, Deepak and you, on who are the youngest. But I had the privilege of seeing the two of you when you were kids. I think if anybody lived in the Bay Area, you would not have avoided them because you have such amazingly friendly parents who are open to the world. And so I've seen you guys since you were babies, and it's wonderful to have you as my equals and my partners in this conversation. So tell us a little bit about the two of you.
Yeah, thank you for the intro. Yeah, so we are the Chandani Twins. We also go by the Moonlight. We are identical twin singers and also realtors, startup tech founders almost. Yeah, so basically, I mean, we studied engineering in college, and as South Asians, it's really rare to see people like us in this entertainment or music industry. So one of our main goals ever since the beginning was to kind of put on for our community and be the inspiration for the younger generation. And then after being discovered by an artist like Wiz Khalifa, we got discovered by Wiz and his team.
No, don't tell your story yet. I have all those questions coming.
Okay. But
do you want to say each of your individual names as opposed to the Chandani Twins?
Oh yeah. So I'm Akash. I'm Krish.
Yes.
Chris Chandani, Akash Chandani. Yeah.
Yes.
But basically, we want to use our platform to motivate and inspire other South Asian, the second generation, our generation and further generations to not be scared of pursuing their passion in the arts and musical field or whatever it is, but also create a good balance in life. We want to lead by example by doing multiple things and having multiple streams of revenue. So I think being young and portraying that goal and path in life is very important. And to touch on that again, the main question people ask us is like, how did your parents let you do this? So that's something we can discuss later, but that's kind of the idea of like why we're doing it, to prove people wrong or right or whatever it is.
If you have anybody in a teenage as your children, nobody asks anymore, how did you let your children do it? We have to let our children guide us. They know much better than us. So we'll talk about that for sure. So I want to go back to Vinita. This is a common question I'm going to ask all of you, is that I think, Vinita, you're an engineer. You went to BITS Pilani, which is one of the toughest schools to get into now and forever that I remember. And the time you went, there were hardly any women that made it to engineering, and you're in one of the best schools. And, even after getting married, you did your management degree in one of the most prestigious institutions. I mean, you really have all the ingredients of a business person, so to speak, right? And yet you chose to start Enact. And so tell me a little bit about what was it for you not to pursue engineering, and I mean, you're pursuing management a lot now, but to start Enact, like sort of, what made you say, I'm going to do this?
Whoa. Okay. So
you have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. I'll speak really, really fast because I'm an actor and I'm trained to speak fast in certain moments. I'll try to keep it all in 2 minutes, and I've wasted 30 seconds of that already. I had to fight very, very hard to be an engineer. I come from a very long line of engineers, but they were all male. I'm the first female engineer in my family. And despite what people think, I love being an engineer. I will never give that up. People think I was an artist all the time and then somebody forced me into engineering. Absolutely not. 2.5% of the population in my engineering college was female. And in every subsequent job, I was the only woman in the room for a good 16 years before another woman showed up. So I had to fight for my place. And I worked with large companies, small companies, started a couple of tech companies. And then I was also what they call a trailing spouse, because my husband worked for a multinational that moved him to many different countries across 4 continents, 23 homes in 4 continents in 9 countries. That's my numbers game. And the thing that fell by the wayside was my art, because up until the moment we started this crazy nomadic life, I had managed to balance the two. And then 3 kids and a career and a 3-dimensional geographic existence did not leave much room for art. And so when I started, when we moved to the US the first time, I started acting with a few theater companies. And I was not comfortable with the fact that I wasn't getting the roles that I wanted, and the kind of roles that I was getting, I really didn't want to do. And I'm a firm believer of, if you don't see it, build it. And so I decided to start a theater company because I wanted to do the kind of plays that I wanted to act in and I wanted to see, and that wasn't happening. And then very quickly I realized that there was, other than Snehal's company, the art scene is very kind of divided. There is the Broadway and Hollywood, which is like all glitz and glamour and lots of money. And then there is the local community effort. And there was nothing bridging the two for people like us, for people from, diverse backgrounds or brown people, Black people. And I said, I'm going to be that bridge. And when I created Enact, I realized that, being a bridge is not enough unless you create a talent incubator with it. And so I started a talent incubator in Enact, and then the rest is history.
So, it's true. And Snehal, I'd love for you to chime in for a minute about this. wanting to be an artist, and because I'll go to the Chandani Twins after you. You grew up in Silicon Valley, right, Snehal? And this is the place where there is a very subtle pressure to be in technology, because you grow up, people eat, breathe, sleep technology. Any party you go to, people are talking about some company, some IPO, some funding, blah, blah, everything. So when did you know that this is not what I want to pursue? I really want to pursue art. And you are the first Indian art director for your institute right now, if I am saying it correctly. And so you overcome a lot of obstacles. But when did you know that this is what you wanted to do, and to go against the very subtle pressure?
Yeah, and I actually grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in Pennsylvania. So
I somehow thought you were in the Bay Area for some reason.
Yeah, but I think that the pressures are similar for anyone who's first or second generation. It's whether it's going to tech or being a doctor, lawyer, engineer, business. I think it's anything that deviates from that.
Family pressure.
Exactly, that's exactly it. So, and for me, it was in college that I was planning to go to law school and to leave theater and the arts behind. And I just kept getting pulled back. And I really found some really great mentors early in my career who really said, if this is what interests you, to keep doing it, even as you pursue other interests, as Vinita was saying. And then for me, I also started as an actor initially, and I was very frustrated by the limited offerings of what was being given, which was pretty stereotypical. And it was as I tried different roles, I tried being a designer, a stage manager, and then it's when I landed as a director that I saw that, I can create the world that I imagine, or I can see a world that reflects my experience and populate it that way, that things really started to change for me. And so that's where I really fell into directing. And then I went to undergrad in Atlanta, and I stayed there for a few years. And then after that, I went to grad school to get an MFA in directing. And it was along those ways that, constantly everyone, it's as Vinita said, when there weren't opportunities to create the ones for yourself that you wanted. So I wrote a solo show, I toured that. And then I found myself actually going to London a lot, because there, the Indian community is much larger, has a much larger history. So there are, organizations like Tara Arts, where that Jatinder Verma founded, where there are South Asian leaders, there are Indian leaders in the arts. And I really was able to, to be mentored by those folks before I came here. And then I think the other thing for us is that the diaspora is very broad. And so it's also separating out what means to be Asian and versus Asian American, and what those different parts of your identity are, and how that will also change the storytelling that you do.
Mm-hmm. So, Akash and Krish, so let me, continuing on that, you guys went to engineering school on a basketball scholarship. I mean, you were like into sports, into engineering and all that stuff. So where did the interest in rap start, in music start in general? I mean, was it like a fun thing, or tell me where it started for you?
So yes, we went to college, played basketball. We kind of used the college to get into a top engineering school. We used basketball. Sorry, we used basketball to get into RPI, which was, I guess, smart on ours and our family's part too. But music-wise, we sing mainly. We collaborate with the rappers, but we're more R&B singers.
Right.
We started making covers as a hobby. We started as shower singers. I would say I started first, and then when I heard artists like The Weeknd and artists I was really inspired by, I would sing those songs around school just for fun around my best friends, and they would say, "You guys should make music. Like, you sound like The Weeknd. You should make covers at least." So it came from our friends, kind of like pushing us, And then I got him into it. Both of us started singing together. We kind of practiced every day for hours every day. Even during the first couple months of college, we just kept going. And I guess that's how it started. Then finally we decided one day to release a original song on our birthday, December 30th, 2016. And then that's when everything just took off from there.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question that I'm sure all twins are asked, is that, do you always feel in sync, like even when you're apart?
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean,
We're
is
not
it
really
nice
apart.
being around somebody who looks like you, talks like you all the time? I mean, it's like a mirror image of yourself, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah, but I mean, like as I was saying, we're never really apart. Maybe like 4 times in our lives we've been apart for like 4 days max at a time. So it's not like, but there is that some weird telepathic stuff going on. I don't really know too much about that science.
But even musically, like in the studio, we'll find ourselves singing the same melody at the same time. We're like, but I just thought of that. He's like, no, I thought of that. So
yeah, I was actually wondering, in music, do you find yourselves in sync, like when you're singing together or whatever?
Oh yeah,
no, definitely. And that actually comes out a lot during our live performances because we never really rehearse. We just kind of wing it. So every time we do a show, we just go up there and do our thing. And we always look at each other during the show. We're like, we just literally did the same melody,
random. We didn't practice this.
We didn't even practice it, and it just happened. And it's the same tune, melody, key, everything. So it does happen like that, and it is really cool to experience that.
So we are talking about being in tune. So Anuraag, I have a question for you about being in tune with different cultures, because you said that you like to write. So, whether it's from Norway or North India, it sort of should click. So do you think of common things that would apply to everybody, or when you go into a culture, you think of what's relevant for that culture? How do you tune in to this diverse audience you want to cater to?
I mean, I think you said that, right? Like this idea that, you were talking about someone born in Silicon Valley, and there's certain sort of underlying assumptions of what that would mean, that they would go into technology, that they would have a thing for startups. I've always been interested in understanding the baseline of the place I'm in, right? And so you come with a bag of stories, right? Whether it's a play or a film, but you've gone into a culture, or if you're telling a story of a culture, I'm very interested in who those people are and what is sort of unique about that place. I went to school in the Midwest. I did my undergraduate in Ohio, and then I moved to the East Coast, to New York, and then I was born and raised in Calcutta before I did that. And each of these places are very, very, there's a DNA that runs through it, right? So I don't come from an immigrant South Asian community. I was born and raised in India, and I come from a part of India where it's expected that you would be in something artistic or cultural. It's not uncommon. In fact, when I went to the United States and I met very sort of powerful South Asian business and engineering people, I realized, how the immigrant mindset might be different, that we have to succeed in a different country. And therefore we have to work much harder. And therefore, there's no time to fool around doing theater and movies. Whereas I came from a sort of industrially sort of backward, lazy part of India, where there's only time to fool around in the art and culture. So each part of the world becomes unique, right? Like Snehal was saying about, about creating the stories that you want to tell. Ultimately, I feel like if you tell an authentic story, but you take it to a place and you spend a little bit of time just learning about the place rather than just telling your story, and mix sort of your story with their story, automatically people stand up and be like, oh, your Indian uncle is like my Norwegian uncle, or like my cousin in Manchester, or like my aunt in New Zealand. I feel like, so I've always been interested in sort of taking the South Asian experience and kind of growing it beyond just South Asian audiences, to sort of seeing how similar our cultures are. Whether it's sort of how we love or how we live, how we marry, how we think about money, it's and it's very interesting to sometimes, with Enact, I had a chance to do a play about two professors, which Vinita was in and Enact directed. And there are audiences, around the world who are not of Indian origin who would come up and say, it was a very specific kind of love story where two people don't get together. And you'd have people come up and say, I had a thing like that in my life, and I'm South African and my partner is from Wales. And you would do the show in a small town in India, in Mangalore, and two people will come up and say, we're professors and we had this sort of life. So it can be very local or very global, but
Yeah.
I think that there's something unique in the DNA of human beings. So if you spend a little time studying a place, you can tell better stories.
Right. And, Deepa, coming to you, as a continuation of that, about tuning in, that Anubhav was talking about the common things that we all have. Now, it's one thing when you're getting close to 30, you're not quite there, to say that, hey, I'm a wisdom historian. Even now people might discount you as, what do you know? You're like so young and stuff like that. But 13 years ago, right, when you were a teenager, to say, I'm a wisdom historian, this is what I want to do. First of all, as a parent, I would worry about how will you ever make money? How will you ever support yourself? How will you, I'm sure people asked you these questions. First of all, what does a wisdom historian mean? And also, as a teenager, how did you know this is what you wanted to do? Was it more that, hey, this something feels right, I'll just go here and find out what it is? Or did you have a very clear idea of where you wanted to go?
Wow. My parents, I think, still ask that question on most Sunday brunches. What does a wisdom historian do? When I started writing songs for Hindi films, they were so relieved that at weddings, they could say, our son is a songwriter, because the wisdom historian conversation would never get them to the whole buffet. So they were very relieved at the beginning of it. But to answer the other part, I think I never, even until now, have accepted the part that I know a lot. What I know is about my own self. I know exactly what a 29-year-old should know and does know. And when I was 14, that's what I knew. But I didn't find enough people correlating the word wise with children or with common people. You would wait for an Oprah Winfrey, and you would wait for a Maya Angelou, and you would wait for a Steve Jobs commencement speech video to reach your home screens, and then you would appreciate the wisdom of that. But there were grandmothers, there were children all across that I was meeting who were profound. And I wanted to make sure that, we just don't label kids with calling them or aspiring them to be smart and intelligent and beautiful. I wanted them to be wise too. And they had that, just that nobody was appreciating and sharing it. So I took it upon myself. I thought, if I start by sharing what I know as a 14-year-old, and then when I started teaching at 17, as a 17-year-old, maybe people will pay attention. And a lot of that credit goes to my mother. She was pulled out of school in grade 5 by her grandmother, which is a story, Lakshmi, you've heard so many times from me.
Yes.
And I never believed that story, because my mother is so smart, so intellectual. So, my dad has never won an argument against her. And that's a good proof of her debating prowess. And I thought my mother is lying to me that she didn't go to school, because she still runs the finances of the house for somebody who never studied profit and loss. And her answer was, life is my classroom. She would just say that on repeat. And I thought, if she is learning simply from living, that means everyone who's living is learning something. And how can I find that, celebrate that, and play with it as an artist? And in all these years, I think that's what my hope has been, that when I investigate a life lesson for somebody else, I get to learn myself better. So it's never been about, entering a room and saying, here I am. It's always been about saying, there you are. Mm-hmm. And that spotlight changes the pressure completely.
Yeah. One of the things I love about doing this is that I get to talk to a lot of you. One of the negative things is, because there's a lot of you, we can't get a lot in from each of you. I can do a half-an-hour conversation with each of you. So we have, like, the last question I need to ask you, we need to wrap up. So I just want to summarize, one of the things about this session is that there's always a choice of, am I going to be the artist, or am I going to build a platform? Whether it's someone like a Vinita or Snehal who decided to build a platform, or someone like each of you are building a platform on your own, but it's sort of, where do you spend majority of your time? And same thing as Deepak saying that I'll build the Project Fuel as the platform. And then Anuraag, through his acts, he's going out. And same thing like the Chennai Twins, just by being there, by being recognized by somebody of international repute, you're making a statement without having to do anything else, just by being there. So I want to ask each of you one last question in terms of what would you like, and these are very heavy words, so don't think about it like, legacy or anything like that, because the legacy we want to leave might change next year, etc. So it's not quite a legacy, but where you are right now, who would you like to influence and how? And again, I'm sorry, you just have 1 or 2 minutes for each of you. What would be your goal to influence?
I'm going to ask Snehal to go first this time.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Vinita. I think it goes two ways. Well, what do you want to do with your art, right? What is the impact you want with your storytelling or your work that you're creating? And for me, it changes. So sometimes it's a representation thing. Sometimes I want to see things where my experience are reflected on the stage, and then sometimes you want someone to push. You know what I mean? The way we're looking at the world, right?
Sorry, Snehal, let me be more specific and say, right now, what would you like to do next? You've all accomplished something fantastic to a certain level with what you're doing, or maybe something totally new. I mean, what would you like to accomplish next? Like with what you have, where would you like to go? What would you like to influence?
Yeah. I think the other thing that's interesting is that we all sit at this interesting intersectionality of cultures. And what I would love is for us to continue to be pushing art forms. For me, I'm interested in pushing the art forms forward. So I love theater, but theater here is very Western. It's very text-based. And then when you come from Asian cultures, theater is more dance and movement based, right? So what is this new art form that reflects our experiences, that is also a dramaturgy of what it means to be Indian American, right? Or the second or third generation in this country. So that's what I'm really interested in, and what that is. And I don't know what it looks like. And I think I'm interested in those artists who are asking those questions, as well as pushing myself to go beyond those traditional boundaries. And I think the other big thing is, what is this role that the digital space plays in storytelling and experience? Because that has all changed during this pandemic. So now you can tell a story in 30 seconds if you want, or you can tell it in 6 episodes over a season. And I think that really creates an interesting way of experience, of a new type of experience.
I'm going to have Vinita go last because I started with her. So Anuraag, what's next for you? And
I've been thinking a lot, Lakshmi, about this. I think there is a good career to be made and a good income to be made in writing stories for other people. There's always some sort. If you want to make a living, there's a living to be made because someone else has a story to tell. And you are a great cabinet maker or facilitator or a craftsman who can tell that story. The hard life, I think, and if you ask Merchant Ivory or Satyajit Ray or Meera Nair, or, all the great ones, the hard life, and with what a lot of people on this panel are doing, including what you're doing, Vinita's doing, the hard thing and the entrepreneurial thing is trying to tell your story when you're kind of certain no one cares, and then finding an audience for it. I think that's
ahead of its time, telling the story ahead of its time.
Or maybe off its time, but you just didn't know because you thought no one would take a chance on it. It's pretty much like, I guess, for a tech entrepreneur, very much like a new tech idea. It's and that's the hard life, because I think if you've done X number of things in your career, there's always someone calling and saying, do you want to work on this project or that project or this thing or that show? The hard thing is doing what you really want to do, pretty much certain that no one's going to pay for it, and then finding an audience and an income and all of that for it, which does not get any easier if you're mid-career or you're starting your career or you're at the end of your career.
So going to the Chennai Twins, you are, as I said, just by doing what you're doing, there's a lot of kids out there probably who are saying, hey, I want to try this. And that's really fantastic. And you're balancing both your business and entertainment life. Do you guys ever think of going whole hog completely into entertainment, or you always want to balance the two? What's next for you?
So actually, we're finding ways to incorporate and to mesh both into one kind of career. Recently, we've been uploading real estate home tours of our recent sales, and putting our music in the background, and our music fan base is loving it, and our real estate network and clients are loving it as well, because we're meshing the two. So our goal moving forward, which we're already planning, is actually a show with the concept of like the Bay to LA, combining both worlds, because I think it would be really cool for people to see two Indian guys, living the LA life with people like Wiz Khalifa, French Montana, whatever it is, in studios, and then getting a call from a client and like, oh, I gotta step out of the room and take this call.
Which happens all the time.
Which does happen. So it would be really cool for people to see that, and we can mesh the home tours, and that's kind of how we plan to remain in the entertainment world for the rest of our careers.
I mean, like on the music front, we just dropped our debut album last month. We have, unreleased songs with like DJ Snake, Travis Scott, Wiz Khalifa, like a bunch of big names that are very familiar with the, I guess, younger generations. But like, I would say taking that music aspect and combining it with real estate is hard to do, but at the same time, we're like twins. We have our own branding. We incorporate, as he was saying, we incorporate our music in our real estate videos. And this idea with the real estate show is definitely going to come together very well. We're thinking of even calling it Bay to LA, because that's literally our life. It's tech in the Bay. We're doing a tech startup as well in the real estate AI ML space. So we're just doing many different things. But in the end, entertainment is definitely going to be the king of all things for us, because I think that's what we're made for. Real estate, obviously, we grew up in the family, 35-year-old business with mom and dad, Deepak and Karishma, and like I'm learning from them has been amazing. But I think it's time for us to like take that a step forward and combine our entertainment aspect and merge them into one, like, kind of like a Selling Sunset kind of career where
I was just gonna say, yeah. And also,
So actually,
real estate is all about giving someone a home, right? So sort of making your living better, and so there's many ways you can combine the two. So Deepak,
exactly.
You say what's next for you, and what would you like? Now that you're a very, very wise 29-year-old.
En route becoming wise. But even before I add to that, I wanted to share a nugget about this question, because I've really implored it over the years. There's a community of people in Bolivia called the Aymara people. And, we believe the future is ahead of us and the past is behind us. The Aymara people believe the opposite's true, because you can only see, what's in front of your eyes, and you can only see your past because that's what you've lived. And on the surface, it sounds like a minor thing, right? Okay, the future is behind you, the past is in front of you. How does it make a difference? But the Aymara people believe that knowing that, or in awareness of that, you are always harvesting a familiar past, not chasing an uncertain future. And so my answer comes from the perspective of reaping a familiar past, which is, how do we humanize with the wisdom that we document from across the world and integrate that with tech? We are making technology accessible to more and more people all across the globe, but how do we build a healthy relationship with it? Children in my grandmother's village spend 18 hours playing, just a game where they could be solving technology, needs of the community using technology. So that's where I think my time in the coming years is going to be invested, and, so much of it in the Bay Area, where people are building the next addictive games and addictive technological revolutions. So I'm trying to see how we can bridge through our work, connect a data scientist in New York to a Maasai woman in Tanzania, and solve the issue of identity, and a Syrian refugee with a tech entrepreneur on building more moral-centric, humanized tech. So that's where I'm headed.
Yeah. And it's not that we're all going to finish talking. I want to ask one or two audience questions also. That's why I'm trying to get
Sure.
So Vinita, how about for you? What's next? And what
I'm
excites
so
you?
speechless after what Deepak said that I don't know if I even want to go. Deepak, you touched my heart. Come to Silicon Valley. I will do everything I can to facilitate all of your dreams. You're just, I love dreamers. I love young people. I love So my response is going to be much more prosaic and mundane than most of the responses over here. Lakshmi, you and I, we grew up in what I call the inflection generation, because there were certain things our moms would never have dreamt of doing. And there are certain things that our daughters will never dream of not doing, like going to work, like going to engineering school. And I think we are the generation that, made that twist in mindset of, girls can do it all too. And so when I started Enact, for a very long time, we were an entirely woman-led company. And then I started because, suddenly the question of diversity came in. So I started to hire men and white people and all the things that define diversity in my upside down company. But I did spend a lot of time focusing on finding stories where a South Asian woman was front and center and the hero of the piece, whether she was an 11-year-old detective or, a 500-year-old empress, or, Noor Inayat Khan, who was a spy in World War II, or the protagonist in Anubhav's play, who, is just so consumed by love that she doesn't indulge that love. And, that strength comes, by the way, I love that character. So in the pandemic, Snehal and I worked together a lot on digital productions, and I learned a lot. And so the next thing I am going to do, I registered a film company last week, and I am going to now tell stories through film of strong South Asian women that break the stereotypes of the kind of roles that I get offered in film over and over again, that of the fat Punjabi auntie, or the wife of the convenience store owner, or that the Big Bang Theory mom who just wants to see her son get married. I am sick and tired and puking at the fact that the only roles I get offered when I tell people my age and the fact that I want to act in film, and say, "Oh, we have a role for you," and I'm like, So I'm a firm believer, if you don't see it, you build it. And that's my next build. I was 49 when I walked away from a very successful tech career and started Enact. This year I will be 59, and I will run Enact, but I will also start a film company to continue in the digital world, the storytelling that I started mano a mano.
One of the questions, so we have a few more minutes that I'll ask actually questions from the audience. And one of the questions is about, would you like to be full-time artists, or would you like to do both? What would each of you say for that? If you didn't have to do a day job, but just do this full-time, would you do that? Or, I mean, some of you are already doing that, but where do you think your preference is?
I'll go first. I miss being in the tech world. I miss my engineering, management, technology career. And the strange thing is that I miss, weirdly enough, the respect that job title brings you when you walk into a room. Not respect, but just that acknowledgement that, okay, you're a certain kind of person. If you don't have the title, people don't acknowledge that. So, and I shouldn't, but I do. But there's only so much one can do. And if I want to be an artist, but I also want to create a platform to make other artists rise, then I can't do it all. And so I walked away from it at the age of 49, and I think I made the right decision, so I'm sticking with it.
How about everybody else? I mean, everyone doesn't have to answer. This is from AGK audience question. So if any of you feel we need to do something different. For us, go ahead. Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think for us, we were always taught from a young age to balance multiple things, and time management was a major factor. Whether it was basketball, like going from homework to practice, or homework to recording music or whatever it is.
I mean, obviously, huge credit to our parents for doing that. They threw us in the fire in everything we did. So we just, grew up very well-rounded.
And you do have to learn to adapt. So I do think that having a supportive career as well, is really good. But of course, our dream would be to be like The Weeknd and going on tour every day and stuff like that. But we do know that having that career as real estate
I would say that would have been the dream like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
But now, since we've been in real estate for 3 full years now, and growing up in the business, that whole real estate show where it's like combining the music and the real estate life with the tech startup, with getting our family friends like the Mr. Subra Iyer or whoever it is that we sell houses to, or they've done their own tech companies before, but having them on the show, interviewing them, getting their perspective of the Bay Area, because not too many people know the depths of the real estate market here, but it'd be great to show that in a new fashion. So I think that's where we're headed right now.
Okay. Anuraag, do you think of getting another job, or where are you?
I used to be a business journalist, and I haven't.
Right.
I do columns once in a while, but I haven't gone back to a day job in a long time. And primarily, I think the reason is that being an artist now is a full-time job, and I think creating is only a very small portion of that. It's a significant portion, but there are so many avenues in which the making of the art now needs to go out. So if it's a stand-up show, a portion of that is available on some technology. There is the physical touring of it. There is also the world around it, which any story comes with a million things. It might come with, things you put out on Facebook. It might come with doing an unrelated TV show. I think the world we live in is very, very hard. You're already doing 9 things by being an artist. And hopefully, I think that the question really is associated with, are you doing the day job because you need a stable income and you're doing the artistic thing for fun? I've been doing this long enough to realize that the artistic life is not fun. It's just a life. Of course, it's fun. I mean, Vinita was explaining this. It's fun when you create something, but it's just like any other job, and its demands are as strenuous, if not more, than any other job. So, I'm incredibly in awe of people who can have a day job and also be a full-time artist. And I'm sure Snehal will tell you, and others will tell you, running a full-time organization, as well as directing their own stuff and running a theater, is like running a business and trying to run a play. Each of these things, and if you're trying to tell 3-4 stories at the same time, exhausting. So, I really think if you want to give it a shot, you have to give it a shot. And you'd be surprised how many people in the corporate world, we think we're not good at, I always think I'm not good at anything I do. But people will come up and say, oh, I could never do the thing that you guys do. Which has made me respect what we do. I think what we do maybe is hard. We're so in it that we don't realize, that, somebody could be the head of something at American Express, but deep down when they're watching a film, they're like, my God, I don't know how they do that. And maybe we don't respect the process, and we think, oh, this is, it's not that hard and nobody's watching, etc. But people are watching, and I think people are quite in awe of skills that artists have. And I think we sometimes, because all of us are in it, we don't think, we don't respect ourselves enough, I think.
Right. And for Deepak, I know the answer already. I think there is
too many jobs.
Very clear this is all he wanted to do, but I'll let you answer that, Deepak.
No, actually, that's the other thing people get wrong about your calling, right? Like, everybody thinks it's this one thing, it's this one part of the goal you discover at the end of the rainbow, and that's it. I think calling is mostly the direction that you want to head to, and things evolve, they shape into jobs and they shape into phases of projects. And that's what, calling is. So as long as you're in the direction, you're safe. But I think the other important thing what Anuraag beautifully said is, I think you can be an artist full time, and there is no other way. Like my grandmother used to say, if you lift a brush and that's the only time you're a painter, you're a very shitty painter. Like, you have to be a painter or a poet in essence, in walking, in lifestyle. The full-time aspect of it is, can your being an artist full-time help you pay your bills? And that's a difficult question. That's where the romanticizing of the job sort of drops down, and you have to say, okay, where's the rent coming from? And if that requires secondary jobs, 4 jobs, 5 jobs, then be it, because that'll help you support your entirety and your being, and will also allow you, I think, to magnify what really enhances you. So instead of seeing that as a limitation, I mean, I was doing 8 jobs when I started Project Fuel. I was acting in films and writing songs and performing poetry and teaching on weekends in like Ahmedabad and Chennai. And I never saw it as a limitation. I saw it as a beautiful tool that was helping me feel secure, so that when I sat down to interview somebody, I didn't have to think, oh my God, my electricity bill is due. How do I do that? I could ask a better question and invest an hour more. So I would say that see your day jobs as assistants that are, your apprentice in helping you become a master at whatever your artistic being is.
Okay, great. So I just want to wrap up this session by saying that I think the biggest thing I really wanted to focus on this is all the choices we make between being an artist and building a platform, in terms of whether it is giving up your tech career to do this, or someone like Anuraag, who just said, this is what I'm going to do, or whether it is somebody, a teenager saying, I want to talk about wisdom, or a teenager saying, I want to pursue R&D. It doesn't matter what it is in each of them. We are kind of balancing between being an artist or a platform at different points of our life, or like a Snehal who's been an independent as well as a platform in the career. I think we all take turns to be an individual artist as well as building a platform. And the thing that is really wonderful about this session is that each of you have found your purpose and found your own way to make it a reality. And I love it that the Chennai Twins want to combine real estate and entertainment. I mean, where else can you do that if not in real estate, right? This is the place we live. This is about our living. And it's a wonderful way to bring those things together. Or like Snehal or Vinita, who are building a really strong platform for a different narrative. And I can't, Vinita, agree with you more of, I get so irritated when in movies they put like a fake Indian accent, and I'm like, just talk like yourself. You don't have to enunciate, this is how Indians, talk.
And we
or
don't all
like
talk
that.
like this anyway.
Yeah.
So I
So I mean, both of you are doing a lot in that. I really want to thank you. And I think, Anuraag, with the kind of humor, you can question those stereotypes, and and I love everything you said about being able to tell somebody else's story through your articulation. And Deepak, I mean, and I have to, like Vinita, I have to say, I loved what you said in terms of the future and the past being in some ways reversed. And I really feel, to wrap up this, I'll say that if I stop doing everything in my life and just look at the past and make that learning help my future, I don't need to do anything else. I think everything I need to know, everyone I need to know already is there in my life. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. So I want to thank all of you for your insights. And it's very incomplete because there's so much more we can talk about.